Ethan had always trusted the quiet rhythm of his neighborhood, but lately something felt wrong. Strange reports of break-ins spread from house to house, turning simple conversations into worried whispers. At night, he found himself lying awake, listening for footsteps that never came but felt unbearably close. He suggested installing security cameras, hoping Rachel would understand the unease tightening in his chest. Instead, she laughed it off, calling him paranoid and claiming he was letting fear control him. Her dismissal only made the tension worse, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets he couldn't yet see. Despite her objections, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that someone had already crossed their threshold. So he made a decision he never thought he'd have to make. He installed a small camera in the corner of the living room, silent and hidden, praying his instincts were wrong. But deep down, he knew they were. The first signs were small enough that Ethan almost convinced himself they didn't matter. It started with the mailbox one morning. He walked out with his coffee and noticed the lid slightly open, tilted just enough to look wrong, as if someone had rummaged through it in a hurry. Inside, the letters were bent and pushed out of order, something that had never happened before. He asked Rachel if she had checked the mail the previous night, but she shrugged and said she hadn't touched it. He let it go, but a quiet uneasiness began to whisper in the back of his mind. A few days later, he found the stack of documents on his desk scattered across the floor. Rachel laughed and blamed the draft from the window, even though the window had been shut all day. Ethan picked everything up, trying to ignore the cold prickle running down his spine. Then the missing package incident happened. He received a notification that a small item he ordered had been delivered, yet it was nowhere to be found. Rachel insisted the delivery service probably dropped it at the wrong house, but Ethan had a feeling this wasn't just a simple mistake. It was becoming harder to brush off the pattern. Each unusual event felt like another piece of a puzzle that he wasn't allowed to see yet. He found himself double-checking door locks before going to bed, moving quietly through the house at night as if expecting to catch something in the act. The anxiety tightened its grip, especially when Rachel's explanations grew increasingly dismissive. She treated every concern like it was an exaggeration, and every fear like it was an inconvenience. Her tone changed whenever he brought anything up, sharp and impatient, as though she was tired of hearing his voice. Ethan tried to reason with himself, reminding his mind that stress could make harmless things appear threatening. But each morning, something else felt out of place. A kitchen drawer left open. A jacket missing from its hook. A mug he swore he had washed sitting on the counter again, with a faint ring of coffee. They were small incidents, but their steady frequency gnawed at him. Even the dog started acting strange, pausing at the hallway and staring toward the front door as if sensing someone had been there. Ethan's instinct grew sharper with every passing day, urging him to pay attention, pushing him to look beyond the surface. One evening, while Rachel was away visiting her sister, Ethan stood alone in the living room and stared at the tiny blinking light from the camera he had secretly installed. He felt guilty for hiding it, but something about the house felt invaded, touched, disturbed. The camera became a quiet reassurance that he wasn't losing his mind. He replayed the recent clips, watching every corner of the home with a careful eye. Hours passed, but he didn't stop. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed that the truth was already forming. He just needed to catch the moment when it emerged from the shadows and revealed itself. The breakthrough came on a quiet Wednesday afternoon, when Ethan reviewed a clip he almost skipped. The camera had captured motion near the front door, and he expected it to be a delivery driver or maybe Rachel coming home early. But when the video loaded, his breath caught in his throat. Megan stepped inside the house. She moved with the kind of confidence that didn't belong to a guest, but to someone who believed she had every right to be there. She slipped off her shoes, glanced around the living room, and walked straight toward the hallway. Ethan froze as he watched her disappear into the bedrooms, like she knew the layout by heart. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, no reason for her to be there at all. When she reappeared, she carried nothing visible, but her pace was deliberate and unhurried. Then she left just as calmly as she arrived. Ethan replayed the footage 3 times, hoping he had misinterpreted something, but the truth became clearer with every second he watched. He remembered the missing package, the displaced documents, the strange behavior around the house. It all began aligning, forming a picture he didn't want to see. That evening, when Rachel got home, Ethan asked her if Megan had stopped by their place recently. Rachel stiffened, her smile fatting into a tight line. She said Megan had only come over once to pick up a sweater she borrowed months ago. When Ethan pressed further, she became defensive, accusing him of prying into her friendships. Her reaction felt rehearsed, too quick, too sharp, as if she already knew what he would ask. Ethan didn't mention the footage. Not yet. He wanted to be absolutely certain before confronting her, and something told him this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, he kept a closer watch on the cameras. He checked them during breaks at work, during dinner when Rachel wasn't looking, and late at night when she was asleep. The tension in the house grew thicker, almost suffocating. Rachel seemed uneasy whenever Megan's name came up, changing the subject or leaving the room entirely. Ethan noticed she started locking her phone, keeping it face down, slipping away to answer messages in the bathroom. The secrecy made his stomach twist. Then it happened again. Another motion alert lit up his phone. He opened the live feed and saw Megan walking through the front door with the same ease as before. This time, she headed straight for the office. She opened drawers, rummaged through documents, and examined items on the shelves as though searching for something specific. Ethan clenched his jaw as he watched her take a pair of wireless earbuds and slip them into her pocket. He felt anger, betrayal, and disbelief swirl into a tight knot in his chest. Megan eventually left, closing the door with deliberate care. Ethan saved the footage and sat silently on the couch, the weight of the discovery settling over him like a storm. He now had undeniable proof that something far more sinister was happening in his home. And he knew that whatever explanation Rachel offered next, it would no longer be enough. Ethan decided he couldn't wait any longer. He needed to know the full truth, and nothing could replace seeing it with his own eyes. He told Rachel he was working from home the next day, though it was a lie. He stayed hidden in the study, his heart pounding as the hours crawled by. Around mid-afternoon, he heard the soft click of the front door unlocking. Megan stepped inside, just as the cameras had captured before. She looked around casually, almost bored, as if entering someone else's home was a daily routine. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he stayed perfectly still, hiding behind the doorframe. Megan moved straight to the office, her eyes scanning the shelves and drawers. She pulled out a small electronic device, examined it briefly, then tucked it into her bag. She rifled through papers, flipped open drawers, and rifled through small boxes containing jewelry and gadgets. Nothing in her movements suggested fear or secrecy, only familiarity and entitlement. Ethan's stomach churned. He reached for his phone, recording discreetly, making sure every second was captured. It was clear now that she had a key that Rachel had given her at some point. Each item Megan touched, each object she pocketed, became undeniable proof of her theft. After nearly 20 minutes, she finally left, locking the door behind her and walking away as if nothing had happened. Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension releasing just slightly, but the anger simmered beneath the surface. He immediately reviewed the footage from the previous weeks, comparing it with the items that had gone missing. Every disappearance, every odd disturbance, lined up perfectly with Megan's visits. The realization hit him hard. This had been going on for weeks, maybe months, right under his nose. He compiled all the clips, organizing them by date and time, documenting every stolen item and every suspicious action. It was overwhelming, the sheer amount of evidence he now possessed. Ethan felt a mix of betrayal and validation. He had trusted Rachel, trusted her judgment, and she had either ignored or concealed the truth. The fact that Megan had entered their home repeatedly, taken valuables, and done so without hesitation made Ethan's blood boil. He knew he could no longer confront Rachel casually. He needed a plan, something concrete that left no room for denial. He copied all the footage onto a secure drive, labeled each file meticulously, and hid it in a drawer only he could access. For the first time in weeks, Ethan allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. He had the proof. He knew exactly what had happened. And when the confrontation came, there would be no arguing, no excuses, and no way for anyone to twist the story. Ethan sat back in his chair, staring at the blinking red light of the hidden camera, realizing that the quiet house he thought he knew had been hiding a shocking secret all along. Finally, the truth was no longer a shadow. It was visible, undeniable, and unstoppable. Ethan decided it was time to confront Rachel. He waited until she returned from work, sitting on the couch with the evidence neatly organized on the coffee table. When she walked in, she immediately sensed something was different. Her eyes flicked to the laptop, then to the folder of videos, and a tightness formed around her mouth. "Ethan, what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. He didn't answer immediately. He opened the first video and let it play. Megan walking through the front door, rifling through drawers, taking small electronics and jewelry, completely unbothered by the fact that this was not her house. Rachel's eyes widened, and she took a step back. That can't be real," she stammered, her voice wavering. Ethan held up the next clip, showing Megan entering another room, moving as if she had full ownership of the space. "I have all the footage," Ethan said calmly. "Every time something went missing, every strange thing that happened in this house, it was her." Rachel's face flushed, but instead of confessing, she snapped. "That's ridiculous. You're controlling. You've been spying on me. You're paranoid," she shouted. Ethan remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. He had expected this reaction. He had anticipated the denial, the anger, and the deflection. He opened the drawer, where Megan's key had been used repeatedly. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she saw it. Ethan replaced it with a new key, locking the house for the first time in months. "That key won't work anymore," he said simply. Rachel's voice rose, angry and desperate. "You can't do this. You have to unlock it. You owe her an apology." Ethan felt the anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I won't apologize for protecting my home," he replied firmly. Rachel shook her head, disbelief written all over her face. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the living room. The air felt heavy, charged with tension, and the silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, Ethan considered calling after her, trying to explain, but he knew it would be useless. She wasn't ready to accept the truth. Over the next few days, the house remained quiet. Ethan reviewed the footage again, each clip reinforcing the reality of Megan's repeated thefts. Rachel didn't come back immediately. When she did, the conversation was strained and full of accusations. She continued to defend Megan, insisting that Ethan's reaction was overblown. He stayed firm, refusing to give in or excuse what had happened. Changing the locks had prevented any further intrusions, and Ethan finally felt a measure of control returning to his home. Every time he saw Megan's key now lying useless in the drawer, he felt a small sense of relief. The confrontation with Rachel had been explosive, full of shouting, blame, and anger, but it was necessary. Ethan understood that protecting his home and his peace of mind came before everything else. He knew the coming weeks would be challenging, but he had finally drawn a line. The truth was out, the evidence undeniable, and now it was up to Rachel to face the consequences of her choices. Ethan sat back, letting the tension slowly ebb, knowing the hardest part was over, but the path ahead would require strength and vigilance. The next morning, Ethan received a text that made his stomach turn. It was from Megan. Her words were sharp, threatening, and unapologetic. She warned him not to take further action, implying she knew more than he realized. Ethan felt a surge of fear and anger at the same time. He knew he couldn't ignore it. He called the local police and explained the situation, providing them with every piece of evidence he had gathered. The videos, the list of missing items, and even the details of her repeated visits. The officer on the line listened carefully, then assured him that an investigation could begin immediately. Meanwhile, Megan attempted to return to the house, trying to use the old key she had relied on for weeks. Ethan was ready. He had changed the locks, and the key no longer worked. She knocked, rattling the doorknob, shouting threats, but Ethan stayed inside, calm and collected, recording everything on his phone for the authorities. Rachel arrived during the commotion, her face a mix of anger and frustration. She yelled at Ethan, insisting he was making a huge mistake, that he was escalating things unnecessarily. He didn't respond. He handed all the footage, screenshots, and logs to the police. After reviewing the materials, they confirmed there was enough evidence to take legal action against Megan. Ethan also prepared a detailed inventory of stolen items, noting when each item had gone missing and which footage captured it. Rachel continued to argue, claiming Megan's actions were innocent or misinterpreted, and at one point she even suggested Ethan apologize to Megan. Ethan refused, knowing that apology was the last thing she deserved. Within days, Megan was formally charged with theft, trespassing, and harassment. The police made it clear that any further attempts to enter the home would result in immediate arrest. Ethan felt a sense of relief, but it was mixed with frustration and sadness. The betrayal from someone Rachel considered a close friend was hard to digest. Rachel began pushing the idea of divorce, blaming Ethan for the stress and tension, claiming he had ruined their marriage. He stayed calm, documenting every conversation, knowing it might be needed later. Ethan also contacted a lawyer to ensure that his legal rights were protected. He wanted to make certain that both the stolen property and the emotional toll would be addressed appropriately. Through the legal process, Megan was required to return or compensate for the stolen items. She faced strict court orders and a potential sentence for her repeated offenses. The authorities also informed Ethan that Megan had a history of similar behavior in the neighborhood, confirming the pattern he had suspected. Despite Rachel's continued criticism, Ethan maintained his focus on resolving the situation lawfully. He avoided direct confrontation, relying instead on documented evidence and legal channels. Over time, Megan's threats stopped as she realized law enforcement would not allow her to continue her actions. The house felt safer, the tension slightly eased, though the emotional scars remained. Ethan understood that this chapter was far from easy, but he had taken decisive steps to protect himself, his home, and the truth. The experience reinforced his belief in trusting his instincts and standing firm when faced with betrayal and deceit. The divorce proceedings began quietly, but the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Ethan presented every piece of evidence he had collected, from the videos to the inventory of stolen items. Rachel tried to minimize the situation, claiming she had no idea Megan was taking anything. She insisted she thought Ethan was overreacting and that the items had simply been misplaced. The judge listened patiently, but asked pointed questions about the repeated visits and the evidence of the key Rachel had given Megan. Ethan remained composed, presenting the timeline of events in a clear, chronological order. The documentation left little room for doubt. Witnesses came forward. Neighbors who had experienced similar thefts by Megan corroborated Ethan's claims. Even delivery personnel testified about packages being taken when no one was home. Rachel's defenses began to crumble under the weight of the evidence. Emails and messages surfaced, showing that Rachel had transferred money to Megan around the times items went missing. It became evident that she had not only known about the thefts, but had actively helped cover them up. Ethan's lawyer highlighted the financial support and the repeated opportunities Rachel provided for Megan to access the house. Rachel's face grew pale as the evidence was laid out, and her attempts to explain or deflect fell flat. The judge asked for statements regarding Megan's legal consequences. It was confirmed that Megan would face probation, restitution for stolen property, and a temporary restraining order preventing any contact with Ethan. Ethan felt a mixture of relief and lingering anger. Rachel was forced to acknowledge her complicity, which affected her standing in the divorce settlement. The court ruled in Ethan's favor, allowing him to retain the house and secure his possessions. Rachel was required to move out and had limited access to joint accounts, reflecting her diminished credibility. The legal resolution gave Ethan the closure he needed, though the emotional wounds would take longer to heal. He realized the betrayal went deeper than he had imagined, extending from Megan's actions to Rachel's willingness to enable them. Megan accepted her sentence quietly, beginning work to repay what she had stolen. She was monitored closely by authorities to ensure no further incidents occurred. Rachel moved in with her sister, navigating the consequences of her choices and the court's decisions. Ethan spent time reinforcing the security measures in his home, installing additional cameras and locks to prevent any future intrusions. The house, once a place of unease, gradually felt safe again. He reflected on the ordeal, understanding that his instincts had been correct from the very beginning. The paranoia he once feared was unreasonable had, in fact, been a vital form of protection. He had prepared for the unseen, confronted deception, and ensured that justice was served. In the end, the truth was exposed, accountability was enforced, and Ethan emerged with clarity, safety, and the knowledge that trusting his intuition had made all the difference. Ethan finally closed the chapter on his marriage. The divorce was finalized, and he retained full ownership of the house. He reinforced every door, installed additional cameras, and upgraded the security system to ensure nothing like this could happen again. Rachel moved in with her sister, dealing with the consequences of her choices and the court's judgment. Megan faced her legal penalties, working to repay what she had stolen and under strict supervision. Ethan spent time restoring a sense of normalcy in his home, slowly reclaiming peace of mind. He reflected on the ordeal, realizing that his early instincts had been right all along. The paranoia he once feared was excessive had actually been a crucial warning. Trusting his intuition and taking proactive measures had protected him from further loss. The experience left him stronger, more cautious, and deeply aware of the importance of vigilance. Ethan understood that life could be unpredictable, and that sometimes suspicion was not a flaw but a necessary safeguard. He moved forward with clarity, ensuring his home and life remained secure, knowing he had faced betrayal, exposed the truth, and come out on the other side wiser and prepared.